what's new on the Burlington waterfront. Hey, now it's happening at the waterfront on Lake Champlain. Whatever the weather, there's so much to do on the new waterfront, the Burlington waterfront.
Hi, welcome to On the Waterfront. I'm your host, Mariah Riggs. And this month, I'm really excited to have 350 Vermont with us. Today, I will be interviewing Katayoun Lam, immediately to my next seat, and Mieke Riddlebarger. Riddlebarger. I almost got there. Thank you guys so much for being on the show. And I'm really excited to talk about 350 Vermont because what you guys do, I think, is so valuable to the communities in the state of Vermont. So maybe some of our audience isn't fully aware, but can you just let everyone know exactly what 350 Vermont does, what that means?
Absolutely. Yeah, so at 350 Vermont, we are a people-powered climate justice organization. We do a lot of grassroots organizing work with volunteers. We started a long time ago in 2011. We emerged out of the global work party that 350.org, Bill McKibben, started. And then a volunteer group started 350 Vermont a year after that. And we really started with a lot of kind of mass protest movements. So there were a bunch of protest walks to protest some of the pipelines that were running through Vermont. And then we have kind of evolved as an organization. Eventually we became a staffed organization as we are now. And so we kind of work in a variety of fields. We do legislative policy work, we do kind of grassroots work, we do weatherization, we do transportation stuff. So we have a bunch of different arenas, and Katayoun and I can both talk about like the specific work we each do.
When did 350 Vermont, I mean, I'm trying to remember, when did Bill McKibben and 350 Vermont really start taking off? How long ago was it?
So Bill McKibben, back in 2007, started a campaign with some Middlebury College students that then became like a nationwide thing, and then those people after that campaign was successful then became 350.org in 2008. So then .org started in 2008, and then in 2010 they organized the Global Work Party, which was 10-10-10 was the date of that, and some people in Vermont did like an event around that, and then those people who did the event in Vermont ended up starting 350 Vermont as a separate like org after that. So 2011 was when 350 Vermont actually started.
But I mean 2008, you're talking 18 years ago.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and there's 350 affiliates all across the country and all across the world now. So we are an independent organization, but we are also kind of under the umbrella of 350.org, which is how we refer to like the big 350. And then there's like these statewide 350s. Some of them are volunteer run, some are staffed. We're a part of the Network Council, which is like this affiliation of 350s.
Which also, I think that's one of the coolest things about 350 Vermont is that it started out as this sort of small, insular kind of collegiate, like, protest organizational group, and now it's worldwide.
Yeah.
So it's another one of my favorite examples of Vermont punching above its weight class for like, international like recognition and like influence, which is so awesome.
Yeah.
So, so the org didn't really start though until 2011.
In Vermont, yeah.
In Vermont.
The like Vermont specific one.
The Vermont specific one. And at that point, were there national ones?
At that point, 350.org existed as like a national and like worldwide also org. And I'm not sure when all the other state groups started, but they all have kind of like started in different times, and some of them have then stopped also, I think. But yeah.
It's one of the most powerful legacies of Bill McKibben.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt, because it is sort of this grassroots organizational unit around climate change and like climate justice. So, getting back sort of into Vermont, what is your role, like 350 Vermont, you deal with what are you guys working on right now in the state of Vermont?
Yeah, so I focus on some of our legislative and policy work. So especially right now when the legislative session is happening, that's kind of my day-to-day. Right now, and over the past year or so since I started, we've been really working on this disconnections protections legislation to protect people from getting disconnected from their electric and gas utilities. Specifically, electricity is what we are really focused on, because as Vermont makes this transition to expanding electrification for heating and cooling and transportation, we really want to make sure that low-income Vermonters, BIPOC Vermonters can all afford to electrify their homes. So we've been really focused on trying to prevent these mass disconnections that we've been seeing.
So to kind of dig into that a little bit, so we're seeing mass disconnections, and so, I mean, are there any numbers around like what's happening, just so people are aware of sort of?
Yeah, so Vermont has kind of a unique utility landscape. Most states have a ton of investor-owned utilities, but here in Vermont, we only have one, which is Green Mountain Power. It's the largest utility in the state. It covers 70% of Vermont ratepayers. And then additionally, we have municipal utilities and cooperative utilities. We have been really focused on Green Mountain Power as an investor-owned utility. There was a month last winter in 2025 where in 1 month they sent out 37,000 disconnection notices, which is 1 in 5 Green Mountain Power customers.
That's insane. We only have 600,000 people in the state.
Yeah, it's really disturbing. And I mean, electric shutoffs really impact families so severely. The research shows that if you receive a disconnection notice, most folks will go without food, they'll go without their medicine in order to pay their electric bills because it's so needed for just your day-to-day life.
Well, in order to live and survive, I mean, I go without power for 3 days because of a lightning storm.
Yeah, and it's so inconvenient. Yeah.
And as much as I like to pretend I could live in the 1890s, it's a real thing.
Yeah.
So wow, 37,000? That's incredible.
Yeah, and it's really hard to find any sort of data around it because there's some confusing reporting requirements from the utilities to actually report that data to the Public Utilities Commission. So we don't know how many of those 37,000 notices actually resulted in disconnection, but it's a pretty substantial number nevertheless.
Now, Vermont used to have a law that you could not turn off, I don't know if it's gas or power, in the winter.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't exist anymore.
So that does still exist. We have a protection during periods of extreme cold.
Okay.
And what we have introduced into the legislature this session is a bill that would expand those protections for summer extreme heat, which we currently do not have protections for. But with the rising heat and the lowering cold, we really see the necessity for not just those winter protections, but summer protections as well.
Well, with climate change, it's a real consideration. I mean, growing up, the thought of air conditioning in Vermont was almost a laughable joke.
Yeah.
Right? And now I would say there's probably 7 to 14 days in the summer where it might be a mandatory need for somebody with like autoimmune issues or the elderly or people with respiratory distress. And that's just a harbinger of climate change and how it's sort of affecting Vermont. Never mind the particulate matter from forest fires in Canada, which is also a whole nother thing that we're just starting to see that for years was never an issue in Vermont.
Yeah, I mean, I'm from Vermont. I've lived here most of my life, and I mean, having air conditioning in Vermont was like, truly, no one had air conditioning when I was a kid. Like, it would have been wild to go to a friend's house and have them have an air conditioning unit, and now everyone has AC because it's gotten so much hotter, even in my lifetime. Yeah,
you used to be able to open the windows. We had this amazing natural cooling effect at night. Where you just open the windows, you'd hear the crickets, like the cold air came billowing in. It was fabulous, but now we don't get that radiant cooling at night. And so they get that sort of oven effect that can be so damaging to people's health. That's great to hear that you guys are moving forward with that.
Yeah, that legislation just actually passed the House last week in time for crossover. So it's
congratulations.
Thank you. It's passed into the Senate, and it's in Senate Finance Committee right now, and we're really hopeful that it'll get passed the Senate as well.
And that's really exciting.
Yeah.
So are there other things that you guys are currently working on?
Yeah, do you want to talk about some of your things?
Yeah, so I feel like I have a much broader range of things that I do. None of them are quite as intense as what Mieke does with the like legislative stuff, but there's like a very broad range. So I work with a lot of our like local nodes, which are arranged around the state. And I kind of, help them make sure everything's running smooth, help them bring in new members and plan events and things like that. So I'm responsible for nodes in like Chittenden County, Addison County, Manchester area. There's a college student node at like UVM and here in Burlington. And there's some other groups that I'm also kind of like working with. So lots of that kind of work, but I also am very involved in our work around transportation. We have a transportation working group that's mostly been focused on Burlington in the past, but it's kind of growing beyond that to be more statewide. And I also do work around weatherization and thermal energy networks and some work around the McNeil power plant in Burlington. So yeah, my areas of work are very broad, but yeah.
So these nodes, I kind of wanted to like help our viewers out a little bit. It sounds like there's nodes throughout the state.
Yeah.
Can they go on 350vermont.org and find maybe a node that would be specific to their community?
Yeah, so 350vermont.com, you can go to our website and .org and go to our website. And we have a join us form and we'll connect you with whatever node is local to your area.
And there's a list of all the nodes.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So if you're really interested and you want to find out more on how to participate with the work that 350 Vermont does, make sure to check out the website, 350vermont.org, and see how you can participate. Getting back to it, you mentioned transportation. Which is a very broad subject.
Yes.
Everybody in Vermont has transportation issues. People in the state drive a ridiculous amount to get anywhere. There's you're from Vermont. There's an old joke that if you actually flatten Vermont out from all the mountains and the creases and everything else, it'd probably be the size of Kansas. So I'm curious to know, because there are a lot of tie-ins between climate change and transportation. What specifically are you guys working on with transportation?
Yeah, there's a few different areas. That group is kind of like working on a bunch of different things all at once. I think like primarily the biggest threat to transportation in Vermont right now is GMT's like funding. They just they provide transit for a lot of the Chittenden County area and some broader areas as well. And they have been in this kind of funding death spiral of losing funding and then cutting routes and then losing ridership because they're cutting routes and then losing funding because they're losing ridership and then losing ridership because they're losing funding. So recently, they cut a bunch of routes and reduced the frequency on a bunch of routes. But of course, the routes that are usually cut in those cases are the routes that have lower ridership, which makes sense, except for that the routes with lower ridership tend to be the routes that are the most critical because they're often the only connection those people in those like more rural communities have to the like larger communities. So cutting those routes is like better for their finances, but worse for like really bad for the people who are living there who don't have any other transit options.
Yeah, how are they supposed to get to work?
Yeah.
How are they supposed to live their lives in communities that are underserved?
Yeah. Definitely.
Wow.
So there's a few.
What's happening?
Yeah, it's and there's like a big funding cliff on the like. Coming up in 2027 for GMT that we're looking at. So trying to figure out how we're going to fund GMT past 2027 is a big issue in the state. So there's some legislative stuff happening with our transportation work. There's a few bills that we're looking at that we're trying to support, but there's also some smaller things that are like less like large scale that we're looking at trying to do to improve that. For one thing, GMT's bus stops are often very poorly like marked. We have a sign that says bus stop.
That's actually true.
Doesn't say what buses stop at that stop or what like route that stop is on. So we have been trying to figure out how we can work with GMT also to see if we can improve some of those bus stops, make the routes like more identifiable, and also make it more accessible to riders who might not have a phone and can't look up the routes on their phone.
Yeah, because in Europe and in other countries, they do a schedule. They do the route schedule at every stop. So you can go to a stop and at least look at the timetable and be like, oh, okay, if I come back here in a half an hour, I'll catch a bus. But again, if somebody doesn't have a phone, if somebody doesn't have access to like the internet because they're at a bus stop, they would never even know when that bus is going to get there.
And some of our bus stops in Vermont do have that, and some of them just don't. Some of them just say bus stop, and there's no other information. And
Very helpful.
That's really helpful.
I was talking to someone the other day who was like, yeah, one time I just stood at a bus stop for ages waiting for a bus that wasn't running to that stop, and I just had no idea that it wasn't running.
That's terrible.
It's not a great system.
No, there should be some policies and regulation just around ensuring that everything is the same.
Yeah.
And that everybody has access to the same information. I mean, that seems like pretty low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. And I think that also comes back to the problem of the funding, though. Like their bus stops need to be improved, but that costs money and time to go out to all the different stops and improve them. So yeah, we're hoping that we can maybe collaborate with GMT and see if we can do some of the improvements ourselves. Like some of them would cost practically nothing and would still make it a lot more accessible for people, even if we just put a sticker that shows what buses stop at that stop on the bus stop signs.
If we have laminator, we'll laminate schedule so it's waterproof.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, those kinds of things I think would be incredibly helpful for people.
Yeah.
And in Vermont, transportation is such a huge percentage of our emissions.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to try to get people to transfer over to electric vehicles, but for a lot of people that's unaffordable, especially with the recent cuts to the tax incentives or the state incentives. And so public transit is a really accessible way to reduce those transit emissions.
And we have great park and rides, which they do try to facilitate again with public transit, but if they're not properly labeled and people don't know how to use them, then there's an insecurity component that makes you concerned about using public transportation.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, that just, again, feeds into the lack of ridership.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a vicious cycle.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the other things that we want to do around the transit stuff is make sure that the people who have cars are also considering riding the bus places rather than just driving all the time, and trying to educate people generally about the fact that they could ride the bus to this event, or that they could the bus is actually pretty easy and it's safe and it's clean and it's nice and you don't have to just drive everywhere. So trying to do some more fun educational things. We have some fun event ideas that are events that would be I have a whole game that I have planned that would be a scavenger hunt that is played using the bus. So you have to ride the bus to play the scavenger hunt game, to try to bring people in and get them riding the bus for one specific thing, to then be oh well, next time I'm gonna go somewhere, I now have that knowledge of how to ride the bus, so I might consider that over
And
driving.
it was really nice. I got to read my book the whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
And I wasn't driving at 75 miles an hour with my hands. I mean, single occupancy vehicles is one of the most hazardous things towards the environment.
Yeah.
And it's something that Vermonters probably disproportionately contribute to.
Yeah, our number one emitter of greenhouse gases in Vermont is transportation.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I have to look in the mirror on that one. Sorry.
Yeah.
But and that's a real thing. And I do think if people could engage more with public transportation, let me know when you do the scavenger hunt.
It's coming.
Okay, because when it's coming, that'd be really fun. I'd love to get that out to people.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think once people did take public transportation and realized that they got more time back for themselves instead of just sitting in a car, that might be a real relief for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you just kind of have to take that plunge, and it's one of the single most important things you could do to help the environment, especially in our state.
Yeah.
Okay, so you talked about transportation, and then the other thing that you were working on was...
I mentioned weatherization, I mentioned thermal energy networks, I mentioned the McNeil plan.
So we're gonna move on to weatherization, which is probably, I would assume in a state like Vermont, also a major source of waste of resources.
Yeah.
And I've been in some pretty drafty farmhouses.
Yeah. We all have.
It's like a Vermont
rite of passage. Yeah.
It is a Vermont rite of passage. So what are you guys doing around weatherization?
Yeah, so we have a group of volunteers who works with CVOEO, the Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity, and CVOEO provides free weatherization to lower income households, but their wait list is years long. I think it's at least a 2-year wait list right now. So our volunteers, despite not being trained in weatherization, they help CVOEO by going into the homes before CVOEO's teams, and they move all of the things that need to be moved out of the house into storage lockers or a storage unit, or just into a different part of the house, to then allow CVOEO's team to come in, do their work, and leave, and not have to worry about all of that. And then our team will go back and put the things back into the homes. So it speeds up the process a little bit on that and helps more our homes get weatherized, which is really cool.
That is really cool. Is there a way for our viewership to sign up for that program?
Yeah, on the Join Us form on our website, there's you can indicate what you're interested in, and that's one of the things on there. So
see, you want to volunteer for that.
Yeah,
that's really cool, because I have heard CVEO I know somebody had to wait 3 years for them to come in, and I mean that's 3 years of just leaking heat.
Yeah.
And again, energy costs are going through the roof. Who knows what gas and oil prices are going to be like next winter?
Yeah.
Which is going to be pretty intense. And then the last thing you discussed. Quick tips for our viewership on how to weatherize their house. Like little things they can do. I mean, most Vermonters are pretty aware of where their drafts are.
Yeah.
Especially in January, you can walk around and be like, oh, that window, that's really bad. But are there just little things that homeowners can do to weatherproof their house a little bit more?
So we also work with this organization called Window Dressers. They are an awesome organization, and what they do is they build really low-cost window inserts that you can put into your windows, especially in the winter time, and it'll fully reduce those very drafty, old, warped windows. They offer free window dressers inserts for families who are low income. And you sign up to get these window inserts, and then you go to their build, and you actually, with a ton of other people, help build these window inserts. So that happens every single year.
Wow.
And we're involved in their builds in a few different areas, including Central Vermont, Chittenden County, the White River Junction. And they're a fantastic organization, and it's really a lot of fun to go to these window dressers builds and just hammer in some window inserts, and then you get to take them home. And
so I know some of you have drafty windows.
Yeah.
So check out Window Dressers. You can solve your problem immediately and then join the excruciating wait list and sit around and wait. But that's an immediate solution. So thank you guys for that.
Yeah.
And then the last thing you were talking about was after transportation, weatherization, and...
There was thermal energy networks, and then there was the McNeil plant.
All right, so thermal energy networks. And I don't even know what that is. So what is a thermal energy network? Please educate us.
Yeah, that's I feel like that's a hard one to explain sometimes, but effectively it's networked geothermal. So
in Vermont?
Yes.
Yeah.
Who knew?
So there's, of course, everyone's changing over to heat pumps now, and we have air source heat pumps and we have ground source heat pumps. And air source heat pumps are great, but ground source are far more efficient, but also far more expensive. So there's this push to link buildings together to share ground source heat pumps and network the geothermal between them, which is great on its own. But there's also the ability to capture waste heat and recycle it to other buildings around that need it. So if you have a building like a grocery store, which runs the fridges and freezers constantly, generates a ton of waste heat, that heat just goes off into the atmosphere, but you can capture that heat and pipe it over to other businesses around the area or other homes around the area to then provide them with that heat that they could be using for things.
Oh my gosh. In Burlington, that would be so useful, because we have such density.
And same with wastewater as well. A lot of wastewater is much warmer than the surroundings, so you can take that heat out and use that for things as well. So currently there are I believe 2 or 3 thermal energy networks that exist in Vermont, but they are all private. They're between buildings that are owned by, I think Champlain College has one and things like that, but there are none that are community scale thermal energy networks. So we have there's projects that are in various states of development in 6 or 7 towns in Vermont. A lot of them are still pretty early on in development, figuring out what sites might be good, talking to the businesses around those or the homeowners around there, and figuring out good potential anchor buildings to build the systems off of. But definitely it's something that is in progress happening around the state right now. So
that's a great way for us to band together too. And to kind of shave energy and to be able, you're right, the freezers and refrigerators in a grocery store, they're just pumping out so much heat out of the back. It's just exhaust. Yeah. And a lot of them just go through vents in the roof, which is ridiculous. It's wasted energy. Yeah. And we could reclaim that. That's amazing. Yeah. I love that. That's really cool. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
I had
of course.
no idea.
I know. I feel like no one knows about them.
I
They're really
know,
cool.
and now we all know, and we're like, that's the best idea ever. Why are we not doing more
Yeah.
of that? And in Vermont, it seems like something that'd be so feasible.
Yeah.
You know, it seems like you could do like the town offices, and that could go into the library, and then like, you know, we have these towns that are like very dense in the centers, the little, you know, like little micro towns, and that they could very easily all work together
Yeah.
and be like symbiotic.
And we've talked about schools as being a good anchor building a lot, because a lot of schools in Vermont and also other places as well have schools that were built long enough ago that they're all like up for renovations on their HVAC systems. And if they're already going to be renovating the HVAC systems, like why not add a thermal energy network, like add geothermal, and then they can even start with just putting in geothermal to power, to like heat the school or power the school, and then later can expand to community buildings in the area as well. So it doesn't even have to be like a massive undertaking all in one go. It can be done like in segments as well, which is cool.
And also as far as educational costs are concerned, heating and oil around heating is one of the primary costs in education, which obviously it's necessary, but that's not helping children out. It's not helping with education. And a geothermal is a much more sustainable use and kind of gets us off that dependency. You know, not to go into it right now, but we are in the middle of a serious energy crisis that is just, I would say is becoming whatever it is going to become. But you know, in trying to find solutions that are a lot more sustainable and energy efficient, that you know that can save us money, that end reliance, you know, and that make our communities more self-sustaining.
Definitely.
I think is really a clear path towards like the future of Vermont.
Yeah, community resilience is so important to our work. It's like really the core of our work is community resilience and community solutions, and things that individuals and their communities can do to work towards a just transition.
And I think Vermonters are a particular. It's funny that 350 Vermont came out of 350 worldwide came out of Vermont because we tend to be a very grassroots state.
Yeah.
You know, I imported my significant other. And one of his favorite things about Vermont is like the town meeting.
Yes.
Like to him, it is the most pure, raw form of democracy that there is. And it kind of blew his mind the first time that he went into our little town and everybody's in like the, you know, school's out and everybody's in the, like yelling in the gymnasium. And he's like, wow, this is real democracy. I've never seen anything like this. This is crazy. And it's such like a part of like the DNA of Vermont.
Definitely.
And it's really cool that you guys are coming up with solutions that Vermonters can latch onto and create sort of like really sustainable solutions for their communities.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've talked about how people get involved, but I wanted to ask you guys, you know, what do you see as like goals over the next like 5, 10 years as far as goals for like 350 Vermont, and how as communities we can try to work together to become more sustainable and to try to protect the environment that we all love. I mean, we're Vermonters. We love our natural environment a lot. So what are the things that like we can work towards or look towards and try to improve?
Yeah.
Do you want me to talk about that?
You both can.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's like a lot of things that we can try to improve. I think that we have, I mean, like there's so many different ways that we can all work to improve communities and make like reduce emissions and make like things more efficient and more, the bus more accessible, make the like disconnection stop. But we all, like, I think core to our mission is making sure that whatever changes we do implement work for everybody and not just for people who can afford it or people who like are, live in a certain area in the state or like have the ability to buy a new car or like renovate their homes or things like that. And so many of the classic solutions, like people are like, oh yeah, you want to reduce your energy use? Great, like buy some new appliances, buy a new car, and that doesn't work for a lot of people. And so I think like the core thing that we are doing is just trying to like make changes that can benefit the environment, but also make sure that those changes are accessible to all people and benefit all people as well.
That's something I love that you just brought up, because the social justice component to climate change advocacy is such an important component. It has to be available to everyone. It can't just be like this very high bar of financial, it is. You either can pay to play or you can't. And there's so many people that want to do more. And so I love that you guys are trying to find solutions that allow people to create change, but it isn't something that is so expensive. It's gonna they're gonna end up in debt for years. Or you're right. Electric cars are incredibly expensive. Heat pumps, incredibly expensive. Just getting a charging station at your house can be thousands of dollars. So finding ways to to help everyone participate in climate change, policy and advocacy is again, grassroots is I love that about 350 Vermont.
Sure.
So guys, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been such a delight. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the work that you do on behalf of all of us in Burlington and Vermont. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for coming on the show. And thank you guys so much for being here this month, and I'll see you here next month.